Okay, as the title says, this is a first look at how future climate change may affect Humboldt Bay, and I'm specifically going to be looking at circulation patterns, salinity, and temperature. This is an initial assessment and my first time at using downscale global climate model projections to look at changes in atmospheric forcing, ocean and watershed conditions, and sea level change all together. All right. For this assessment, I'm using the RCP 8.5 high emission scenario projections, which is going to give sort of a maximum exposure for changes to the bay. And now that I'm sitting here, I'm feeling like maybe I should have took my foot off the gas pedal a little bit, but it's a little late for that now. So on we go. Just remember, these are kind of worst case conditions we're looking at, okay? And just to remind myself, all results are annual average values. Okay, so we're going to rely on a Humboldt Bay circulation model. This is something I've been working on for quite a while now. I think I've presented on it at 2 different symposiums. Right now, the model, it's basically been evolved to just have more resolution in the bay. That is smaller and smaller grid cells. Right now, it's working at about 40,000 grid cells. This particular model has been calibrated, validated, and we run it for 2014 to 2022. And I'm calling that the simulation period just because it might come up again. All right, so the model is forced by 3 types of boundary conditions. We have atmospheric forcing, which are things like air temperature, relative humidity, wind speed, etc. We also have ocean boundary conditions, which need tidal levels, and then salinity and temperature concentrations. And there's also about 15 tributaries that flow into the model domain, 12 of which are in Humboldt Bay. And for those, we need flow, salinity, and temperature. And the reason I'm doing this slide is these are the variables that we need to update to look at future conditions. All right. So for the climate, for the climate scenarios, the data, I was able to get downscaled atmospheric and tributary flow data from CalAdapt. So these are from this RCP 5 projections, and CalAdapt and others have actually downscaled them to our area. And so we're able to use them directly, sort of directly. Eric was nice enough to provide me downscaled ocean and salinity temperature. I'm not going to try to pronounce this name, but it's a recent publication, and it's on for the California current system that he talked about. And then for sea level rise, I'm just using the intermediate scenario from the new OPC 2024 draft document. Just to be transparent, there were some limitations. I did not have downscale data available for all of the atmospheric variables. So the way I dealt with this is I just assumed 2019 is pretty representative average condition for today. Kind of existing conditions. And that allowed me to just take the model boundary conditions for 2019 and adjust those into the future for the variables I could change. So just think of this kind of like Groundhog Day, just repeating 2019, but in a warmer future, all right? And so the periods that were simulated, I just said 2019 represented existing conditions, and the future period is 2095. All right, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time going through this slide. This is a schematic of the Bay model with all the different model forcings that have, see, these are changes to the model input for 2095 based on that RCP 8.5 scenario. And it's important that we understand this because this is what drives the model and gives the results. So for the ocean boundary side, and these are annual average changes, in 2095, we're looking at about 0.8 meters of sea level rise, so about 2.7 feet. The expected ocean temperature is going to increase by about 2.4 degrees C, so I'm going to let that gel for a sec. And then salinities are actually expected to decrease by about 1%, and that's just due to all the fresh water entering the ocean. From the atmospheric forcing side, we see that air temperatures are expected to increase to about 3.6 degrees C. And actually, this was a little surprising to me, but precipitation here is supposed to increase by about 10% annually. We had some variables, and there's a definitions down here, but we see relative humidity and wind speed actually decreasing a little bit into the future, but not a lot, only by a few percentages. These were the variables: sea level, pressure, solar radiation, cloud cover, wind direction, that I just couldn't get downscale data for. And so what I did is I just assumed there was no change, and I just used the 2019 data. And then for the streams flowing in to the model, we're seeing about a 22% increase in stream flow, and the streams are expected to heat up by about 3 degrees C. All right, so as we start to go through the results, I'll give sort of a bay-wide average, but then I also broke the bay up into 5 regions. Everyone's sort of got their favorite spot. So we have Mad River Slough is the red, North Bay is orange, Entrance Bay is kind of this green area, South Bay is in blue, and then these light blue areas are what I'm calling sub-estuaries, and these are the freshwater slough and Elk River sloughs. So I gotta get it. All right. So the first thing we're going to look at are changes to circulation. And what this slide is trying to show is just how can the amount of water how does the amount of water change that flows into the bay from the ocean? All right. And so just to orientate yourself, 2019 are the white arrows, that's existing conditions. The dark blue is the future condition in 2095. And the units are about 1,000 cubic meters per second. The takeaway here is that with about 0.8 meters of sea level rise, we expect to see about 20% more water coming into Humboldt Bay from the ocean, right? And that translates to about 19% more water going into South Bay and about 25% more water going into North Bay. Okay, I'm going to continue with circulation, but before I do that, I want to just do a little housekeeping on these slides, because the next 3 are all going to be repetitive slides. So the figure on the left, whoops, wow, that's loud. The figure on the left is existing conditions, and these are going to be shown with these heat map colors, where the lower values are the cooler colors, the blue, and the higher values are the warmer or red values. There's a delta change, and this is just showing the relative change of the future condition compared to 2019. So you just take 2095 and you subtract 2019 from it. And then there's a summary table that just summarizes these slides for the average bay and then the sub areas. So, okay, so getting back to the slide, this is showing what's known as age of water or residence time. And residence time, you can think about it as it's the average time that a water particle wants to basically live or stay or reside in the water body. So in this case, it's the water that would stay in the bay. Humboldt Bay, and this is existing conditions, has an annual average age of water of about 27 days. Even though this is showing up a little bit different, but we tend to, as you go down towards Entrance Bay and South Bay, the age of water tends to range from about 19 to 22 days. But as you go north towards North Bay, the age of water starts to increase. North Bay has an average age of water of about 36 days or residence time. And Mad River Slough just really likes to hold on to the water. And that's got an average residence time of about 55 days. Okay, so I have to sort of apologize for the scale on the change here, but I think you can see that what we're seeing is that in general, we're getting a negative change in residence time. And what that's indicating is that residence time should decrease into the future in the bay. So on average, what we're seeing is about, for Humboldt Bay, we should see about age of water decrease by about 4 days or 15%. And if you look at the percent change, that seems to be relatively constant across all the sub areas, indicating that from a relative sense, age of water should decrease fairly uniformly across the bay. And what this is telling me is that due to the increased ocean and bay flow and the increased tributary flow, We're seeing this decreased residence time is sort of indicating perhaps that circulation will intensify into the future, increase. Okay, 5 minutes. Whew. Okay, so let's look at salinity. As you can see on the plot on the left, ocean salinities tend to be about 33 PSU. I'll try my best to not flub that one up. 33. Humboldt Bay on average tends to be about 31 PSU, so it's about 2 units less the bay, which tends, that's just due to the fresh water that enters the bay. There's not a lot of variability between bay, so average salinities tend to run about 29, 30 up to about 32 between all the bays. The lowest annual average salinities we end up with are in the sub-estuary areas, and that's not a surprise because that's the interface where the tributaries happen. Looking at the potential change into the future, excuse me, even though ocean salinities are decreasing by about 1%, overall the bay salinity should increase by about 1%. It's not a significant increase anywhere, but we are going to see higher salinity levels in the bay. As you get down by the entrance, those tend to be South Bay, they tend to almost be 0% change. We see about a 3% change in North Bay, and the highest changes we would be expected to see are in these sub-estuary areas. And this is really just an indication that as sea level comes up and more water comes into the bay, saltwater intrusion is just going to move more into the bay and increase salinity levels. All right, so the final thing we'll look at here is surface temperatures. Under existing conditions, the ocean is about 11 degrees C on average, and Humboldt Bay is about 13 degrees C. So the bay tends to heat the water up about 2 degrees C on average. You can kind of see that in Entrance Bay, this part of Entrance Bay, it tends to track pretty well, stays the same temperature as the ocean. But as you start to move into the shallow mudflat areas, into the bays, temperatures go up pretty drastically. South Bay tends to have an average temperature right around 13 degrees C. And up in North Bay, Mad River Slough, and even the estuaries, we tend on average to have about 14 degrees C temperatures in the bay. All right. So let's look at the temperature change. Given the increased air, ocean, and tributary temperatures, we're going to see fairly drastic increases in water temperatures. On average, Humboldt Bay should be about 3 degrees C higher, about a 25% increase in temperature. As you look, once again, remember, this is under RCP 8.5, it's extreme condition, okay? Because I heard somebody go, oh, wow. If you're looking around Entrance Bay in this area, it tends to track pretty well with the increase in the ocean temperatures. But once again, as you get into these shallow water areas, we're actually starting to see even a higher increase in temperatures in these shallow water areas. And that's pretty uniform. So, on average, about 25% in the bay, and then these shallow water areas can go up as high as 26 and 30%. Mad River Slough area is expected to see increase in temperatures of about 4 degrees C. All right, so summary. Expected changes under the RCP 8.5 high emission scenarios. Overall circulation in Humboldt Bay should intensify. Humboldt Bay salinities will increase, but not a lot, about 1% on average. The biggest change will be with Humboldt Bay temperatures, and we're going to, we could be seeing increases of over 3 degrees C or 25% increase on average. The largest changes will be associated with Mad River Slough, North and South Bay, and sub-estuaries, which basically just indicates that distance from the ocean and shallow water depths are important. All right, so I only presented annual average changes here, but I'm expecting to see even larger changes if we start to look at seasonal differences. All right, so that's it. I do have 2050 results available. couldn't get to those in 15 minutes. If people would like those, you just send me an email and I'm happy to share the whole presentation, and there's like 35 slides, so you can have them all. And I know my time's up here, but I'm gonna try to do this. So the idea for this project came to fruition like 12 years ago in Frank's office. In fact, I think Susan Schlosser was even part of this. We tried numerous times to get grants to support the work, and we struck out every time. The work we were proposing to do then was more involved than what I'm showing here, but I just felt like this was my one opportunity to try to show people that we do have the tools available to us to actually take this information and perhaps, as Frank was saying, be able to kind of move more of the biology and the ecology changes forward. Thank you.